All right, Fogel. Like I can't help but think of
I-
Superbad, man, when I see your last name, John. Like,
yeah, I have a
you ever-
funny story about that
let's hear
actually.
it. Let's hear it.
So Superbad came out. Superbad, one of the people who I went to a high school on the north side of the city, north side of city of Chicago,
All right, yeah.
and it was a very famous high school for people who are in like go on to be in media and especially comedy. So like John and Joan Cusack went to my high school. The movie Mean Girls was written about my high school.
No.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's written about like two high schools, but
Okay.
like it's about like half of my high school and half of our rival high school. Like we just but Katie Heron sits in a bathroom and says, I'm going to Evanston High School. Like so like it's about my high school. And so like yeah, because it's in the same town as Northwestern, like all of these artistic people go there. And one of the writers on Superbad went to high school with my brother. So
No.
I'm not saying that the character is based on my brother. He's not. My brother is not like that. But I am saying that all three of me and my two older brothers all went by our last name to such an extent that people didn't know my first name. And when I was a high school volleyball player, they announced my first name. A lot of people are like, "Oh, your first name's John. That's cool." Like that, like that was the. And so when you have a character who's named Fogel and everybody just calls him Fogel, like it's a vibe from my
Yeah, man.
family.
So do you ever go chicka, yeah?
I am McLovin. Yeah, no, I do that a little bit. But really that actor, I forget what his name is, Christopher, I forget,
Something,
I
yeah,
think so.
yeah.
He just absolutely slayed that part.
Oh,
Like
he
just
did.
absolutely slayed
Yeah,
that
man.
part. Yeah. So that he just all the credit to him.
You know what's really funny is so I saw that movie so I saw it when it came out in the theaters and I never saw a preview of it. And I was actually out of town because at the time I was in medical device sales and I had to do like these trips that were like 2 weeks in length away from my house. So like what we would
Oof.
do, I sold during this time I sold surgical drapes and gowns. So and a whole variety of other things. But so if you want to go in and basically convert an entire hospital OR, and usually a lot of hospital ORs are anywhere from 15 OR suites to 40, right? And there's there's a lot of procedures that happen just in one day. What you
Yep.
have to do is you have to get there at like 4 a.m. in the morning. You have to set up all of their carts for the day because they're basically evaluating all of your stuff and it's the
Right.
stuff they cover the patient with and all that. So you got to stay there in the hospital. It is insanely long days. You start at
Oh
4
yeah.
a.m. You're done at like 7 o'clock at night every day for like 2 straight weeks. And we would be like just smoked after a day. And it was usually a team of us. Like it would be me and my boss and some of my coworkers. Like they would bring other workers in to help. And my boss, who was a really cool guy, and he was very young and he was just hilarious. We got along great. And me and one of my coworkers, he's like, hey, he's like, let's go out to dinner tonight and then we'll go see Superbad. And I'm like, Superbad? What's Superbad? He's like, oh, it's this new movie. It came out. The previews look really good. And I'm like, all right. So the three of us go. And I don't know if I've ever laughed so hard in a
Theater
movie
theater
theater
experience. Yeah.
than watching that movie. We were dying. And like, we just, for the next like week and a half or however long we were there, like the thing that got us through those long days is we would just quote that
Just
movie.
quotable,
Like
infinitely quotable.
I don't, we almost went to go see it again while we were there. We're like, let's go see it one more time. We didn't do it. But yeah, when I
But
saw
that's
your
that
name,
just kind of goes, yeah, and it just kind of goes with like when you're cooked, like you have to do something like that. Like you
yeah.
just can't, like there's no space. I used to work in film and TV and there was like 20-hour days every day. And like first of all, we wouldn't even like we just sleep. Like that's all you did, right? Like you would get home and you'd sleep for like maybe 3 or 4 hours. And if you were a PA and you were first on, like you were just back up again. So that was like 16 hours was like a normal day for
And
us on
what's a
that.
PA? What's a PA?
A production assistant. So
Okay.
like the grunts, you go get somebody coffee, basically. Just like don't let people. And most of mine were like, don't let people walk here. Like why? Because there's going to be a helicopter flying past, so just don't let anybody walk right there. And so you like all these suits trying to push past you, like I got to get to the Chicago Stock Exchange, and you're like, sorry man, we're going to set off a bomb down there. We can't let you. We can't let you walk down there right
You
now.
can't say that now.
No, no, well, no, like literally we were.
Right.
Like we were
Right.
literally
I know.
blowing up
Yeah.
a truck on the street. Like there, well, we were on Transformers. I was like, we're literally blowing up a truck. So like
Oh, no way. You were on that set?
I
Oh, that's
was.
pretty
Yeah,
cool,
yeah, yeah.
man.
Yeah. It was a very, it's a very, yeah, I got stories, but yeah, but then basically what you're saying, like we got married and I was like, man, do I really want my life to just be 16-hour days and then just come home fried? And the
Sounds
answer was
awesome.
like, yeah,
Sounds like a
no.
great trip to right to divorce court, you know?
Well, and that was the thing. Like, and I'm not casting aspersions on any individual person that I worked with, but like, yeah, the amount of infidelity, the amount of just like substance abuse, the amount of just like just, and these are all really good, kind-hearted people. And it's a little bit different when you're working on TV because it's just shorter days. And so I did some TV stuff, and it was much more like a typical job. But I didn't even work on that many movies, and yet the amount of just like when work becomes your whole life, like these guys, these women, they never saw their kids. They never saw their partner. And so the idea that like, oh man, like maybe they're, we're in some sort of 3-hour break because a famous A-list actor that every girl I've ever met is like obsessed with is right now having explosive diarrhea. Like we like had to cancel an entire day because of that. And like so then
Is
we
it
would all just like
was
have
that
nothing to do.
is that a
And
true
then we would
story?
just, it's 100% a true story.
Oh my, I'm sure you
100%.
obviously can't name who it is. I'd be
I'm
dying to
sure
know.
I'm sure that I signed an NDA at some point that I'm not allowed to, but yeah, like one of the nicest people that I've ever worked with, but like the A-lister where it's like every girl is like,
I'm
oh my
sure.
God, he's so hot.
I can only I mean, my head I mean, I'm thinking of like three right now, but like
Yeah.
it happens to everybody. Happens to the
It
best of
does.
us. Really
It
does.
does. It
Yeah.
does. So yeah, but then when those breaks happen, like you wind up just like sitting and you can't go home to your family. And so like just bad stuff happens.
Mm.
And so that I'm not saying the culture is bad. The culture is actually really beautiful in its own way. People, so much camaraderie. You have, people of all walks of life working together on this like singular focused project. But yeah, it was just very obvious. We're not doing this with our
Wow.
life, because it is your whole life. And so that was a really pivotal moment for me. Actually, it was before I was a dad, but as a dad, of realizing like my own dad worked a lot and I could just go down that path and work a lot, or I could not do that. And that was the beginning for
That
me.
was
Yeah.
some what was it like growing up for you? I mean, you mentioned your dad. I would love to give the audience some context on,
Yeah.
what your relationship was with your own dad. Because I'll be really honest with you. I mean, I know we're kind of like joking around, right? And that's
Yeah.
why I love having fun with this show, man, because like too serious gets a little too boring. But
Totally.
um, but like you're an intriguing guest to me, and I'll tell you why. For a couple different reasons. I've been watching your stuff on Instagram. I've gotten to know you because I went on your podcast, and I got to be honest with you, man. Like, I get this feeling that you have like this kind of like silly, funny slash sort of comforting like aura about you as a father and as a man. Like,
Mm,
I don't know what it's about. I mean, I think you kind of get, an intuition about people. You get that first impression from people. But like, dude, immediately when I met you, I was like, I could totally see myself hanging out with this dude and like
mm,
laughing hysterically at all the dad
mm.
shenanigans and just being a dude. And but I'm curious, like what your upbringing was like. Anything to do with who you are today. I'm wondering what that's all
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. I mean, I think kind of my whole seminal thing with whole parent is that it matters how you parent your kids.
Yeah.
And so to say that it's not a product of my upbringing, like it absolutely is. I think that by and large, I had a really stable, secure, and emotionally healthy parenting experience. I had a two-parent household. My parents loved each other. Both my parents worked a lot. So my mom is a career woman as well. She has a PhD in nursing ethics, and she had two full-time jobs, or like one half full-time, one full-time job my whole life. So she was a educator, she was a college professor, and that was full time. And then she also, because she wanted to stay sharp as a nurse, continued to work as like a nursing consultant the whole time through my, early years and adolescence. And then my dad ran a sports equipment company. He was the COO slash CFO slash like first guy hired at this pretty large sports equipment company that like if you go to any kind of rec league in the Midwest, or really now it's like nationwide, you're likely that your kid is playing soccer with their soccer balls. Like my
Wow.
the first time I signed my kid up for playing soccer, I just like showed up at the field, like AYSO or whatever it was called, and like it's all my dad's company stuff is just what they're using. So not a name that you necessarily recognize off the shelf, but definitely like PE classes and stuff like that. But he was gone a lot. So when I was really little, he traveled a lot. But then when I was in middle school and high school, he would work probably 60 hours a week, almost every week. So every Saturday, he was at the office driving in. But the thing is, in the time that he was at home, whenever he was at home, I was a priority. And whenever I had something going on, like I was a volleyball player all through high school. I played soccer my freshman year of high school, and then I played volleyball. And then I bowled my senior year of high school. That's a whole nother story. I
It's like
started,
it's like the
I,
germaphobe's worst nightmare right there.
I, well, you have all your own gear when you're like a competitive bowler, but yeah, but yeah, no, bowling alleys are a nightmare in
Yeah.
and of themselves. Well, I actually started the bowling team at my high school. I
You
like just me
did.
and my friends got, yeah, and I like shout out to the girls team this year. Uh Qualified for state for the first time in history of our high school. But yeah, I started the bowling team at my high school in 2010.
Wait, were you the only player there for a while, or did you have
No,
like
no, no.
people?
So like you have to
Okay.
have fun. So it's me and my buddy would just go to the bowling alley all the time and just screw around. And I was like, okay, I got two guys. I bet if we just put the word out, like literally just put up flyers around the high school, like, would you want to be on the bowling team? Like, come meet at this classroom after school one day. And like I showed up, my friend showed up, and then like 10 other people showed up and they were like, yeah, never bowled before, but I would love to do that. And we got this like really weird guy who's like not really, I shouldn't say he's a weird guy. He's just like he was not a teacher, but he was like somehow affiliated. He was like a teacher's aide, and he was like, I'll be the sponsor of the bowling team. And so like he was like gonna be our coach. And then randomly he kept saying, I know there's probably a diamond in the rough. This is just like his saying. There's some diamond in the rough somewhere at our high school who's probably a great bowler. And we were like, okay, whatever. And literally at the first time we ever like held a practice, this kid walks in, like neck down, sponsored everything. And he was like
No.
one of the best bowlers in the state of Illinois.
Oh my
And
God,
he's
that's
like,
great.
yeah, I go to high school here. And we were like, what? Third practice, the kid just throws a 300 game.
No, get out.
Yeah. And we're like, what the heck is going on here?
Oh my God, look at
And we
that.
were like, we're like on a TV show or something. Like this kid, he's not like in high school. He would just show up. He just blinged out everything. And he was just like, yeah, my name's Mike Thomas. I'm here to like,
Did he have a prom date?
he had every prom date. Like
Did he really?
I'm like he probably came to like just the vibe on this kid was like he probably came to prom with like a 25-year old.
Oh my God.
Like that was the
There.
vibe that you got was that he like he came to prom in like a Bentley with a
Oh my
25 year
God,
old
dude.
woman like that was his vibe. So anyway, but so like my dad was like super involved in that stuff, and he would always show up. And so even when we were my team started to joke with me because I played volleyball. Volleyball's a tight knit community, and so you I played with the same kids for 4 years. Like the freshman A team was the starting senior team, other than like a couple kids, like maybe two kids, and so we were like my whole group. We like to travel together. We play club together, and they were like, your dad. All these other kids had dads who were just kind of like around, but they were not committed to them.
Yeah.
And but my dad was, they called him the Green Arrow because he had blonde hair and blonde goatee. And he would sit up in the highest rafters and just scream at the refs. And they were like, no matter where we go, we could drive to like, 2.5 hours away from the high school. He'd be there. And so
Yeah, man.
simultaneously, I had this dad who was, I'm not going to never say that he was absent because he wasn't, but he wasn't there for the small stuff. But
Hmm.
anytime anything was needed of him, he was there. And so it just was this model of like, I'm going to be there. But he was not always emotionally regulated. He did not do feelings very well. Um, there was no abuse in my household, but like it definitely got screamed at all the time. Like that was just part of it. And so my journey to parenting was like even in late high school, I started in competitive. I was pretty competitive athletically, and I started like playing rec leagues. But then also I went and played volleyball in college, and I realized that I had inherited all of my dad's like empathetic love and connection with other people, kind of what you're talking about. Like I just love people and I want to be around people. But I also inherited this just like, man, I had a hair trigger temper and I would just fly off and just be so out of control. And so you have kids, you know this, right? Like what's going to come out? It's going to be both,
Hmm.
right? I'm going to be the hair trigger temper guy who screams at my kids, and I did. And also the guy who like, but I had a pretty good childhood, and like it's a mess. Like all of us have work to do from our childhoods, but some of that looks different. Some of us reject what was done to us, and we flip. Some of us go, you know what was done to me turned me into the person that I am today, and so I'm just going to do exactly that, and I'm not going to ever question it. I think either of those is you it's way more nuanced. And so yeah, that's how I am who I am today. But it's taken a long time to get the education and the stuff like that to really get to the point where I feel like I'm actually effectively parenting my kids. Because
Yeah.
so much of it was like I was never going to have a problem loving my kids. That was just never going to be an issue for me. I was never going to have a problem showing up for my kids. That was never going to be an issue for me. But validating my kids' feelings, oh yeah, no, like that was not modeled growing up, my mom or my dad. Like validation of feelings was just, we don't really do that. And so how do we do that? How do I learn how to do that? And that's been the whole parent process. And that's like why I do this work, is to help other people do that.
Yeah, and I want to get to that. First of all, like I'm just picturing your dad like yelling at the refs, like it just like here's the cool thing, right? Like your dad was there for the things that were big, right? And
Right.
he did what he could with the time that he had, and even though it sounds like his job was very very demanding, that's like the biggest battle, man, between like okay, like I've got these mouths to feed. I got to keep this roof over my kid's head, and I have to balance being there for them. And I want to make one other point here, but I want to ask you, how old is your dad?
So my dad actually passed away 7 years ago.
Oh my
So
gosh, I did not know
yeah,
that. So
yeah. So my
sorry.
dad, yeah, he passed away at 65 years old.
Oh my gosh.
About a month before my son turned one, my oldest. And so
Wow.
my dad, yeah, he was like the healthiest, most active person that you've ever met in your life. He was like 6'2", running 7-minute miles at
Oh my gosh.
64. And then, yeah, he got a rare form, I guess not that rare, but a rare form of like bladder cancer. And it took him out in a year. He was gone in a year.
Oh my gosh, man.
Yeah.
That's the craziest thing, man. Like I know people, and I'm gonna leave names out, but like people that are in my family that have abused alcohol, like to
Hmm.
the point where I'm like, and and they're inching 80 years old, and I'm
Hmm.
like, how? Like how? Never one form of exercise their entire lives, drank themselves, smoked themselves into an oblivion, and they're still pretty healthy. And then you
Hmm.
have, people like your father who took really good care of themselves. I feel like I see this all the time, but anyway, it's just, I'm so sorry to
Yeah.
hear that. But like the reason I ask your dad's age is because my dad's 75 and still in good health. And my my dad's dad, my mom's dad as well. So our grandparents, like I always talk about their generation as like they were like the freaking toughest people on the planet. Like
Hmm.
if you really think like our grandparents, they went through like the depression, they went through world wars, right? They went through Like my grandfather didn't, he finished the eighth grade and then he had to go work because his family needed money because that was the time of the Depression. And my dad or my grandfather was like, he was rough, but he was also somehow, some way, even though he was a tough blue collar man's man, he somehow, some way, he was also very compassionate, very empathetic. But I don't
Mm,
think he was like that as a father, but he was definitely like that as a grandfather. But I think,
yep.
our parents, like me and you, our parents were raised by like, hey, we work and we're tough, right?
Hmm.
And that was the grit that our dads were raised with, right? It wasn't like this empathetic thing. And by the way, like too, it really wasn't expected that dads really showed up. Like even my stepfather, that was a part of my life for 6 years. I mean, dude, like I never saw the guy. Like he would come to my baseball games on the weekends because he was traveling a lot for work and that kind of thing. But I didn't grow up feeling like I missed anything because other dads were doing that too. But I think
Oh yeah.
we're seeing this shift right now, and it's in our generation, me and you, right?
Yep.
And it's like, you know what? And here's what I like about your story, and I also appreciate this about my own experience, and then other people have come on the podcast. Like I grew up with a crazy childhood as well. I've evolved and I look at that now and I'm like, you know what? Great. Like it was an experience and it made me who I am, all the good and all the not so good. Right.
Right.
But I take ownership in that. But I think we're seeing this generation of fathers now, me and you and all the other guys who listen to this podcast, that they're like, you know what? No, I want more. I want
Right.
more. I not only want to be there physically, but I want to be like connected to my kids. I want to have fun with my kids. I want to roughhouse with my kids. I want to be emotionally connected to my kids. At the same time, I'm not exactly sure what good looks like. I'm trying to
Right.
figure that one out. You
Right.
have I really think I watch your stuff and I'm like, man, this guy's really kind of cracked the code on this whole thing. And I love watching your social media because it's funny, it's fun, it's educational. But I want to
Yeah.
give the audience some context before we get there of like what your family looks like with your kids and wife and everything.
Yeah. I mean, just to be totally transparent, I haven't cracked the code, you know? And
But
like I
kind
feel
of,
like I haven't, right? But I think that that's like a really important thing to start with, to say that, when I talk to, so I've been in this parenting educator on TikTok, Instagram space now for a couple years. And in that process, because I'm one of the only men who does this, and really the only guy who approaches this from the I'm a dad perspective. There are some people who approach it from the I'm a therapist perspective who are men, and some people who approach it from the I'm an educator, like I'm a early childhood educator, I'm a man. I'm one of maybe the only people who talk specifically about parenting in this way as a guy. And so it's opened a lot of doors. And I can tell you that every single one of your favorite parenting authors, I guess I don't know all of them, but 90% of them, all the ones I've met, all of us doing this work on social media, we all have the exact same thing, which is we haven't cracked the code. We're just doing our best and we're publishing and publicizing it. And so other people come to me all the time and I'm like, man, but if you saw me at Costco, I was like about to snap on my kids at Costco this
oh
morning
yeah.
because I'm with my wife. My kids just act wild around my wife when we're both there. They like cannot handle it when we're both there. Why? I'm not exactly sure. I can't tell you like 100%, but
How old are
yeah.
your kids? How old are they?
So I have a 3-year old, a 2-year old, and a 7-year old.
Okay.
So
So I mean that
so
that sounds
yeah,
pretty appropriate for like
yeah.
absolute
No, it's a
chaos
par for the
then.
course. It's par
Yeah.
for the course. So yeah. So as far as like how I have gotten to this point, I think I think a lot of things happened in rapid succession. The first thing is I went to seminary, and in the process of going to seminary, I went to a seminary that was not hyper focused on like you have to know all this religious training. It was also like you are going to be the first line of mental health defense. And more seminaries are doing this. My friend went to Seattle School of Theology and Psychology. So like there are these institutions that are doing this. And so my training was with licensed trained therapists who are like, hey, we're not training you to become a full-fledged therapist, but we're training you to become like a good enough therapist so that like you can convince people to go seek help, but also identify if people have serious concerns because they won't go to anybody else. And my first day on the job as a pastor, somebody scheduled a meeting with me. I met her a week later and she was like, basically, congratulations, you're my new therapist. And here's my all of my trauma. Here, you can have all of it. So I'm glad that they did that. But that happened. My dad died. My son was born all within a year. This is all taking place. And then we decided also maybe we want to become licensed foster parents. And so we went through the process of becoming licensed foster parents. The wound up with the state of Illinois. It didn't really work out. We were licensed, but we never had a placement. But in the process of all of that training, because it's a pretty intense training regimen, it kind of everything kind of solidified where I was like, oh, I have all this training on psychology, but I'm going home and I'm treating my kid as if I don't, as if I might know what the right thing to do is. But when it comes to my own family, I'm just on autopilot and I'm just doing whatever was done to me, which again was not horrible, but it was in some ways not ideal. My kid's much more sensitive than I ever was. And just he is like that's just who he is. And so like I had the training, I had this, and then when the foster care was the link where it was like all of this training was around effective parenting of traumatized kids. And they were basically like, well, it's not you have to parent a traumatized kid differently than you parent a not traumatized kid. It's that you really the margin for error is really, really small. Like
Man,
yeah.
I just want
It's
to
so
stop you there for a second because, man, I am so curious about something. And I think the
yeah.
audience would love to hear this. And selfishly, I would love to hear it too.
Yeah.
We're trained in something, right? And let's
Mm-hmm.
just say, and I really want to stick on this realm of parenting because I think that is one area of our life. Like, so for instance, if I go research stocks,
Mm-hmm.
right, or like how to invest in stocks, I'm probably going to lean on that training hardcore to make my decisions, right?
Yep.
And that is also going to judge my behaviors. The
Yep.
same thing with like fitness, right? I mean, I'm a fitness guy. That's where I got my undergrad in. It was sports medicine with a minor in nutrition. So I rely on data and I
Yep.
rely on my experience to make decisions of what I'm going to eat and what I'm going to do and all those things. Same as you. Same as you,
Right.
man. Been doing this podcast now for almost a decade. And what I still find to this day is that I will my first reaction, my first response as a father, I want to default to the thing that I learned I should not do. Like, so it's
Yeah.
like I've
So
learned
you
all
want to
these
know why
things.
that you want to know
Yes,
why that is. Okay.
please.
So the reason why this is, right, fundamentally is because what's our brains like the way that I try and understand. So I don't have a degree in neuroscience, but it's the thing that I study the most of all of the things. And my sister-in-law is a PhD in behavioral neuroscience, so I can lean on her somewhat. Um, but here's the thing about your brain. Basically, brains are just predicting things. Like this is how your brain functions at the simplest level. It's trying to predict the future. And then when the future happens and it becomes the present, it says, did I get that right or did I get it wrong? Did I get it
Okay.
right or did I get it wrong? And that ones and zeros is basically how all of your cognitive decision making takes place. So I make this is what's going to happen. This is what I'm anticipating happening. Am I right or am I wrong? Anxiety is when we as humans become so sensitive to getting the wrong answer that we just start to get really scared about anything that happens in the future. But like that's like what that condition is. Depression is lamenting in the past what's happened in the past, even though there's no way to change it. So really, when you think about it, is your brain is just trying to predict the future, predict the future, predict the future. Well, essentially, what happens is it creates neural pathways to do that more effectively. So now, when if I said to you a burger joint, you're depending on what I said, your taste buds would actually start to like feel like, oh man, your mouth would start to water. If I said,
Right now.
imagine sucking on a lemon, right? Your mouth would start to water. So like there are neural
Yeah.
pathways in your brain that are firing all at the same time. Well, when you're at really, really formative stages of development, when you're really young, the neural pathways are when I as a kid did this, this was the response of my adult. And that becomes an ingrained neural pathway. And here's the thing about those neural pathways, they become intrinsically implicit memories. So they're not explicit. You don't remember it happening to you necessarily, but your brain still remembers it. Even though you can't think about it, your body keeps track of that data. And so With parenting, we're actually usually not parenting from our logical brain, we're parenting emotionally. And actually, here's the thing about trading stocks or nutrition or whatever. I bet if I got you hungry enough, all of your nutrition training would go out the window.
A
I bet,
1000%, man.
I bet if I got you amped up on a certain stock enough, all of your
Yeah.
training would just go out the window. So emotionally, we are able to, many men, we're able to kind of cut through the noise and make logical decisions from our prefrontal cortex. When it's our kids, usually the thing that's happening is we're not going forward with that. It's something that's happening to us. Our kid is acting a certain way. Our kid is melting down. And so then we're in our emotions and we just go down the prescribed neural pathways that we built when we were kids. And here's the thing that you have to remember about your brain. Your brain is slow at processing things in comparison to reacting to things. So if you saw a
Wow.
tiger walk into your room, it would take your brain about half a second to think the thought, that's a tiger. By the time you thought that thought, your entire body would be flooded with adrenaline, epinephrine, would be flooded with cortisol. All of the blood would have moved out of your prefrontal cortex and into your brainstem and into your muscles so that you could run. And so, in all aspects of life, we are reacting to our emotions and rationalizing them. Your emotional brain is so much faster than your cognitive processing. So everything that happens in your life, you react to it emotionally. It's people don't like that I say this, but it's true. You react to it emotionally, and then you logic your way out of it.
Oh
So
my gosh.
anything that
That makes
happens,
sense.
because it's faster. So your emotions happen instantaneously. Your logical processing takes about half a second. So by the time that you feel a feeling, you're already halfway down most of those neural pathways that were established when you were a kid before you can ever say, wait, wait, wait. I know that yelling is not effective in this time.
Mhm.
Who cares? You're already yelling by the time you even thought that. So that's the thing, is that we actually have to be able to stop ourselves short and rewire the neural pathways. And the more you do a thing differently, as you know probably better than me, as being a parent much longer, the more you do it the right way, the more you actually build those new neural pathways. But when people have their first kid, they're just going to parent how they were parented until they have enough time to build new neural pathways. And so it's not that they're a bad person or a bad parent. It's that until you have enough time, it's like paths through the woods. All those paths from your childhood, those are the paths that are so compacted down, nothing even grows anymore. And you would just, if you found yourself in the woods and you found one of those little trails, you would just walk down it. You wouldn't even think twice about it. When you're trying to set new neural pathways, you're trying to blaze a new trail through
Mhm.
the woods. And so it's going to be so much harder to blaze that trail than to walk down the path that you've already built. But the more times you walk down that new trail, that you blaze that new trail, the more you can actually go down it unconsciously. So it's really, and the more time you spend off of those less than ideal trails, the more they grow in. So it is a process that takes a long time. But when you say that, hey, I know what to do, but I can't stop myself from doing the thing I don't want to do, like, you're right. That's literally your brain going, all I'm doing is predicting what comes next, and this is what comes next. What comes next when your kid talks back is you either smack them or yell them. Like,
Mhm.
that's what comes next. And your brain's going, make sure, hey, that's what I think should come next. Confirm that for me. And you just
That
have to, it's hard. It's really, really hard.
My God, man, that makes so much sense. It really, really does. I never really understood what you did is you just simplified, clarified. I'm sitting there replaying so many reactions I've had in the past. And like literally, I think since I've done this podcast and doing this stuff, like I'm one thing that is really, really helped me, right, over the past, and I'll just use me as an example because I think some of the audience members might agree, if they listen to the podcast, is that my awareness is extremely high, right?
Mm,
To where like, okay, I know what's happening here, but there are certain times and more times than I'd like to admit that I'm like, I'm yelling at my kids and it's almost like I'm witnessing it happen. And I'm like,
yes.
I know exactly what you're doing. And this is not what you want to do, but you just are not stopping yourself. And it's just like, it's almost
You're,
like, The
Your
weirdest,
brain is a half second behind. So like this is literally what's happening.
really.
Your brain is literally your logical processing, the part of your brain that's watching what's called metacognition, thinking about thinking. The part of your
Oh,
brain that's watching you react is literally a half second behind and they can't pull it
really?
back in. And it's on, but there's no blood flow. So your prefrontal cortex might be on, but if we stuck you in an fMRI machine, it would not be really lighting up. It would be very, very subtle. And so you're yelling, and all of this stuff is just walking down these established neural pathways, and you're literally witnessing yourself do it. So that is actually what's happening. It's not an excuse because most of us, like as adults, there's a part of our prefrontal cortex, the in the very center, in the very front. I could think of it as like a little dot right here, that can communicate backwards to our emotional centers of our brain that are deeper and older, and it can communicate and it can say, "Chill out." And our inability to do that is only because we have not trained it.
Mm.
In the same way where you're like, "Well, I'm complaining that I can't, curl 100 pounds." Well, did you curl 20? Did you curl 40? Did you curl like how much are you working out? How much are you going to the gym? You're not going to be able to do this unless you train that part of your brain to do it. And I have exercises on how people can do that. But literally, when you're reacting in those moments and you're like, oh my God, why won't I just shut up and sit down? Nothing good is happening. I'm yelling at my wife. I'm saying all these things that I'm going to regret later. I know that this is bad, but I'm still doing it. It's because the part of your brain that is you, the part of your brain that's logical, is literally in the back seat of the car going like, this is not good, but I have no control. And that's what's happening. It's just behind.
Is this why in Anchorman, Steve Carell was like loud noises? He just, felt that reaction.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much neuroscience went into that movie.
Oh my
You know what I
God.
mean? But
Yeah.
yeah, no,
I ate a big red candle last night.
yeah,
No, that makes so much sense. So okay, the question then is this. I and I don't want to jump ahead, but here
yeah.
is here's one thing that I've been doing lately. And you know, you'll you'll appreciate this, man. Oh my God. This makes so much sense to me now that we're having this conversation. So I've got a 17-year-old and I've got a 16-year-old and I've got a 10 and an 8-year-old. We call them the
Okay.
bigs and the littles. And so maybe I need to give myself a little bit more credit that I've gotten better with this over time because especially my 16-year-old, like if something mad chaos happens, right? And I'm able to somehow stay calm. My 16-year-old will look at me and be like, he'll like shake his head, like almost in disgust, like that I
Mm-hmm.
stayed calm, right? And
Mm-hmm.
he'll look at me and be like, what the heck? And I'm like, what? And he's like, Dad,
Never when I was a kid.
right. He's like, Dad, if I would
Mm-hmm.
have done that, you would have blah, blah, blah. And here's my response to him. I was like, well, yeah, but I used to be an asshole. So right. But
I
like,
mean, but
I
yes, like
yeah,
actually, you've trained neural pathways to be more patient, and you've probably built up your gray matter in your prefrontal cortex to be able to slow down. And that's the thing that people are like, I don't understand why I'm so different. No, because you literally changed the anatomy of your brain.
that's interesting.
And because I know your background from being on my podcast, what I can tell you is that when you are raised in somewhat chaotic environments where it's hard to anticipate things, all those neural pathways are built, yes, but also the literal anatomy of your brain changes. And
Hmm.
the part of your brain that's reactive, that responds to threats, that feels threatened by anything, right? That part of your brain is called the amygdala. That part of your brain is literally larger when a kid grows up in a traumatic household. That part of their brain is larger than a kid who grows up in a peaceful, consciously thoughtful household. And when it's larger, it takes up more space and it's activated more quickly. So literally, it's not just like you were dealt a difficult hand and you had to train these new parts of your brain in. You were also preconditioned to be more reactive, like because of your brain anatomy. And it takes that much more. That's what we talk about cycle breaking, right? It takes that much more to break that cycle when you are raised in such a way that changes the literal structure of your brain a little bit. And you can shrink it. Like neuroplasticity says that like the more we do this work, we can adjust. But most of us don't, this is our factory default settings. And your factory default settings preconditioned you in the same way that my factory default settings, because of neural pathway development, were when you get upset, you yell at people. That's what
Mhm.
my dad did my whole life. Like he got upset. He's mad that the house wasn't clean. He screamed. He's mad that the cups didn't stack. He screamed. If he had been mad that the cups didn't stack and drank, what do you think I would do? I would drink.
Yeah.
That's what it is,
Yeah.
right? And we don't take that seriously. We don't go down that path enough to really identify that so much of our work as a parent, if you really want to fix the way that you parent, is to literally struggle like you would learning any other skill until over time you get to that point. And then one day your 16-year-old shakes his head and he goes, yeah, I don't get it. Why
Yeah.
couldn't I have gotten that?
Right.
And the amazing thing to do is to turn to it and go, no, you're the reason that I don't have to yell anymore, because I learned from you. I learned because I loved you so much that I wasn't going to be that way. And I'm sorry that you were the first and you took,
Took all the hits.
you took all the hits that now your little brothers
Yeah.
don't need to. But like that's like you saved them from that because
Man.
you did that. And that becomes its own powerful narrative.
It
I'm
does.
a
It does.
protector.
Let's do you have time to dive into that a little deeper?
Yeah, yeah, we got 5 minutes. Yeah,
Oh,
let's do
okay,
it.
cool. Well, let's wrap it up with this because I think here's what you've done, man. You've really given some incredible like knowledge based evidence of why we do what we do, react the way we do, right?
Yep.
And I love the analogy that you gave, like, well, I can't curl the 100-pound dumbbells. Well, maybe like those of us who are prone to be more reactive because maybe how we were grown up is the amygdala has been doing the 100-pound dumbbells, right? And
100%.
the prefrontal cortex have been maybe doing like the 15s. So let
If
me ask
that.
you this. How do we as parents then work out that
Yep.
prefrontal cortex to where did I say that right, by the way?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Nailed it.
How do we train that like in real time
Hmm.
to where we're doing the things that we respond the way that we want to versus the way we just default react.
Right. So, a couple things. The first thing is that we have to get some practical tools in the moment that we can ground ourselves. And so if you're unfamiliar with grounding exercises and things like that in therapy, and I can come back on another podcast, we can go into this for an hour because this is the stuff I talk about.
I would love to have you back.
I did a workshop. It was like 3 weeks ago, how to stop yelling at your kids. And it was like a 75-minute workshop where we basically just talked about this. And so I can go forever. But the short answer is you have to develop some actual grounding exercises that are going to help you to not lose it in the moment, because you can't help your first reaction. None of us can. And a lot of like you could talk about this in any aspect of your life, right? You can't control how you think. You can't control your first reaction. You can only control how you respond after that first reaction. So when you feel like, man, there goes the blood pressure, and many of us were never even trained to think about in those terms. We don't even know when we're getting triggered. So by the time we know it, so I guess the first step is awareness. By the time most men figure this out, they're already halfway down the ski hill.
Yeah.
Like they don't even, that's my metaphor, right? You're skiing. Most guys don't even know when they go over the edge because it's at work, it's whatever, they're already halfway gone. So once you start to recognize, okay, I'm getting there, I'm getting to that point, I'm going to lose it, you have to have some grounding techniques. There's stuff like deep breathing, and it sounds dumb and hokey, but
No, it
like
works.
literally it works. And so, I call it like a 5-4-8 count is a really good
Yeah.
one. So five in, hold for 4, out for 8. That can be a massive helpful tool. You can literally do, the kind of the classic grounding exercise, which is going around your room and actually grounding yourself in the present moment by saying, okay, I see like, some red flashcards here. I see my green, drink. I have my black microphone. I'm identifying things in the moment. And this, by the way, the way that works is that activity of naming things that you're seeing and smelling and hearing and all of those things those are all processed in your neocortex, which is part, your prefrontal cortex is part of your neocortex. And as you do that, you push blood back out into your neocortex. So the same thing happens, by the way, with the deep breathing. You're stimulating your vagus nerve, which then activates the antidote to all of your scary rage hormones.
Parasympathetic system,
Parasympathetic
right?
nervous
Yeah.
system. Yep. Just totally flips the nervous cycle on its head. So the deep breathing, grounding exercise like that. And then ultimately it's 40 seconds. Can I not yell for 40 seconds? If you cannot yell for 40 seconds, then the part of your brain, your sympathetic nervous system that's driving you into this rage state will not have enough like activation to keep going. So it's like a fire that needs more and more fuel. You can't usually stop the spark that starts the flame, but you can not feed it and it'll die in 40 seconds. So doing all of those things just so that you don't scream for 40 seconds. Once you're past that 40 seconds, for some people it's more like 50, but once you're past that, let's say a minute mark, now you're going to respond in a different way with empathy, compassion, whatever. Again, I could talk about this for an hour, but you're going to respond effectively rather than yelling, punishing, shaming. You're going to do something better. And that is literally going to train your brain to walk down that path. So the next time it's going to be about 1% easier to walk down that path. Then the next time it'll be about 1% easier. And over time, eventually you'll reach a precipice where unless your kid does something that directly triggers some sort of childhood wound, your natural state will be to respond and be effective rather than to react. And then one other tip to this, and there's another side to this coin. That's what you do in the moment. There's the working out outside of that. We'll call this the nutrition, right? So as you know, you can curl all you want. If you're not getting the right amount of protein, you're just going to be eating your own muscle tissue. So the nutrition side is there are a couple things that you can do. They're called contemplative activities. That things like meditation, journaling, obviously talk therapy, something like that. But even just like sitting with your thoughts, thinking about thinking works. And the more time you spend in those spaces of contemplative thought, meditation, all those things, you literally build what's called gray matter in your brain. And gray matter is the unmyelinated the neural synapses in your brain. And they slow down. They're like a patient's pill that you're taking. So if you could take like a pill tomorrow, somebody comes out with it and it just increases your patience by 5% in a month. If you take it every day, you would do it. Like what we know from the research is that this is what this is. All you have to do is meditate for like 15 minutes a day in any way, and your patience will go up. Like it doesn't even matter if you do anything else, you will be more patient because your brain will literally slow down how it reacts. You just won't react that way to non-reactive things. You'll still react, instantly when you're in your car starts swerving off the road or something, but you won't react, in other ways. And then the last piece is that you have to take care of yourself because as soon as any of your basic needs is not being met, whether that's a need for connection and intimacy with your partner, eating healthy, regular exercise, getting enough sleep. The vast majority of men do not get enough sleep. If you're not sleeping more than 7 hours a night, I'm sorry, you're not going to be a good parent. Like you just can't be. If you're not doing those 4 basic things to take care of your basic needs, then every aspect of your life is going to suffer. And in the suffering, one of the main things is going to be you're going to be more reactive automatically. When you're hungry, you're more reactive. When you're tired, you're more reactive. When you're stressed, when you feel like your spouse is not listening to you, you're more reactive. And so, you're not going to be able to slow down and find those new neural pathways. You're not going to be able to do that meditative work or journaling or going to a therapist or whatever. You're just going to be constantly playing catch up. And so if you are able to do those things functionally, I have never talked to a guy, never once, where I've worked with a guy and he's done those things. Have they continued to yell at their kids 6 months later? Now, One off, yes, of course. Your kid does something that they've never done before that is directly linked to you, some childhood wound that you're not even aware of. Yep, still yell.
Mm.
You're have a newborn, you haven't slept in 3 days, all you've eaten is DoorDash. One off, yeah, you're gonna scream at your toddler.
Yeah.
But the people who are yelling 3 times a day every day that you see your kids, I've never not been able to cure one of them by just doing that stuff. It's incredible. And I was the worst of them. Like I yelled at my kids 4 or 5 times a day. I could not communicate. I just immediately went on this path. And by intentionally doing that stuff, it's building a muscle. And now I'm at the park and people are like I said, I was like going to lose it in Costco today. It was like totally, I was probably hungry as other issues, but, I'm at the park and people are like, I just don't even get, like, I don't even get it, John. How are you just so attuned and not losing it? And I'm just like, yeah, I did the work. I actually worked at
Yeah.
this.
You went to the gym and did
I,
the,
$100%.
the prefrontal cortex curls and
100%. Well, yeah, and yeah, you like I said, it's all of those aspects. It's taking
yeah.
care of yourself. It's the nutrition of actually building in healthy lifestyle choices. Like all of that stuff together really gets you to a solid foundation.
You know, what's really fascinating is, and I know we need to wrap up here, but so I created a course called Creating More Patience. It's like 3 or 4 years ago, and it was wildly popular. And I put in there, I didn't even call them this, but as you say it, that's what they were, the grounding exercises. And one of them was deep breathing, and the other one was identify things in the room quietly and say it to yourself. So like computer
Yep.
screen,
Yep.
mouse, water bottle, because it
Yep.
would buy you the time that you need before you reacted. And I never, so that was one of the
It's
hack, but
even yeah,
yeah,
it's even more than that. So it's like literally the action of saying external hard drive
yeah.
that requires for my conscious attention to go and retrieve from wherever it's actually stored in like 100,000 different places in your brain, but all of the information about what an external hard drive is, my mind has to actually go and retrieve those things, and they all live in your neocortex. And so in the acts of like essentially going to the store and picking out all of those different aspects of that thing that you just identified in the room, you force your brain back online. And I have a course on toddler tantrums that I'm about to do in like a month, and how to hack toddler tantrums so that you never have to deal with toddler tantrums. And the course is built around the idea that you can do this with kids. That
Oh
you can
yeah.
actually, when your kid is melting down, you can be like, show me your nose.
Show me your nose. That's
and
great.
and like and like it will revolutionize your ability to parent effectively, because you don't have, it's not distracting them, you're literally bringing their brain back online. And then you can talk through, we are not able to get the muffins right now. we I know that you like the muffins. Liking muffins is not the problem, but we cannot buy 100 muffins from Costco. We do not going to eat these muffins.
Is that
And
how
that
you
kind of
talk to
thing.
your kids?
I actually try and talk to my kids like Mr. Rogers.
I saw you
So
do that
So yeah,
that
so I try
imitate that
and really,
impression. Yeah.
really slow down. So I talk to my kids about this speed,
Mhm.
because this is the speed that a child can process what you're saying and understand it at the same time.
Oh my gosh.
And I also tend to talk in this voice because there's no hard edges and it's non-threatening. So even if like sit down and put your seatbelt on, because I will literally chuck you out of this window. Like
Uh,
I will I will crash the car if you do not stop screaming immediately. That is
oh
so
my
much more
God.
effective than being like, stop screaming, because then all the kids are like, and
Right,
then that's
right.
just like, oh, I've lost all of my ability to parent now. So
We're going back to Anchorman where I don't know what we're yelling about.
100, but like
Yeah.
that scene in that movie, I don't know what you're yelling about, describes 90% of conflicts with
Yeah.
toddlers.
Oh my God, dude, that's great. Listen,
So
I definitely want, I know you got to run because you have a hard stop, but like, I definitely want to have you back here, man. This was too good. We got to do a part two. So,
yeah, let's do a part two.
Yeah, let's do a part two. We got to make sure that the audience knows you're coming back because this was too. And I'm just gonna share this with selfishly. I would really like a part two, and I just want more time with you because the stuff I took meticulous notes. If you saw me looking down, I'm like typing away at
Yeah,
like
yeah,
all these
yeah.
gems you're giving us. So man, thank you. But in the meantime, I want to get before now and the time you come back, let the audience know where to find you, where they can connect with you, and what's the
Yeah.
best way to do that?
Social media everywhere at Whole Parent.
At
W
whole
H O L
parent.
E, not HOLE. I've learned I have to say that. I'm not the whole parent. That's weird.
Yeah,
I'm the whole
whole
parent.
parent.
WHOLE parent, and on all the social medias. And I actually have a podcast. And my podcast, other than having guests, I have a guest like every 4 times or so.
Yeah.
Other than having guests, I just answer parent questions. So that's my whole thing is like I just spend like 15 minutes answering a question like, why do I always seem to yell at my kids even though I know it's not what I'm supposed to do? And I just talk like that. So yeah, we should get some dad edge members to ask some questions, and we'll dig into it. Why do you
Well,
do the things that you do? Yeah.
well,
Why do
I
kids do the things they do?
I didn't want to let the cat out of the bag, but I do have an idea around
Let's
round
do
two.
it.
You want to hear it?
Hit me with
So,
it.
okay. So here's the thing. And so I run a community called the Dad Edge Alliance Mastermind. We've got about 800 guys who do life with us on the daily. And once a month, I like to bring in a speaker to answer questions. So I just host it and then they ask the questions. We're on a big Zoom call. We'll probably have at least 50 to 75 people on it. Do it for an hour. We get as many questions as we can in. We record it and then we re-release it as a podcast. But that's just one of the
Let's
perks of
let's
being a
do
community
it.
member. All right. I
I
will
so
get
I this is I do I have a membership too, about
yeah.
700 people, and I do group coaching twice a month. So this is like literally I do this all the time. Is all I do. I'm I'm ready to go.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. Awesome,
Awesome.
brother. Well, I will have all the links in the show notes. I'd love to have you on. This was so much fun. And gentlemen, if you want to connect with Fogel, head on over to Jon Fogel. Head on over to thedadedge.com/Friday 150 for this show again. Thedadedge.com for
150.
150.
That's
I mean,
pretty cool.
yeah, I mean, I do 3 shows a week. So like we have Friday shows, we have Wednesday Q&As, we have Monday shows. So like I try to number them so people can find them easy.
Friday
Um,
150. That's where I'm
Friday
at.
150. That's right. Yeah, man.
Alrighty.
Appreciate you, brother. And by the way, if you could give us your best chicka chicka yeah on the way out here, that'd be awesome.
Ooh. Chicka chicka, yeah.
Chicka chicka yeah.
I try to do my Fogel impression, and it's just you have to kind of get in the front of your mouth. It's like it's not weird. It's the second most common name in the world.
Oh my God, dude, this is great. I could talk to you all day, man. I love this.
Let's
Thank you
do it.
so much for coming on, man.
Yeah. Take care.
You too.